Back on the PHENIX Investigations Podcast, we got lead investigators Joel and Anj. Appreciate you guys coming on. How's life?
Thank you again. Life is good, busy, but good.
Good, we like that. I see the Dunder Mifflin sticker behind you, Anj. I love that.
Yep, big Office fan.
Yeah,
Living
universally.
your dream in the office.
Always. So last time we talked a lot about asset search in general, how you guys think about it. Obviously, a specialization of PHENIX. And today I wanted to focus on something we hit on a little bit last time is divorce. Obviously, I was just looking up some stats before this. Bigger numbers than I thought. It was 41% of first marriages end in divorce, about 50-something% of second, and 70% of third and on. So it happens a lot, and obviously money and finances are a big part of those scenarios, and often that ends up in your lap. So I want to focus on sort of the emotion, the motivations, the processes behind these divorce asset searches. So Joel, you've been doing this for a really long time. How are divorce-oriented asset searches different from other categories, if at all?
Yeah, so I'll actually let Anj hit on that a little bit. I have a little bit more on the emotion side that's a little bit different for me. So I don't know which one you want to go first, but or does it matter?
No, Anj, just rip it. It sounds like you're ready to go.
Well, I was going to talk about some of the reasons why our divorce clients come to us, and we do get a lot of cases that are centered around divorce or alimony or child support, usually stemming from the divorce. Sometimes people come to us and they don't know anything about the marital assets, or sometimes even their own personal assets. Like maybe they just weren't the person who was in control of the finances. So they're kind of really in the dark. And they need to know about their own assets as well as what could be split between the two, and they don't know anything about it. Sometimes a divorce client comes to us and they believe their partner has planned for the divorce. It could be anything from a couple months before to years before, and they are worried that the other partner was squirreling money away over time or dumping money into unknown investments or property to try to lessen that total amount of money that would be split between the two partners. I mean, we've even seen individuals pay off large amounts of debt right before the divorce so that all that money that could have been split is then going towards personal car loans, unsecured finances, things like that. Sometimes it's peace of mind. I think, they get to that point where the discovery happens in the divorce and they just want to know, is this truthful? Is that what they reported in that financial disclosure, is that truly the assets that were available and there? And sometimes finding out that there is additional information that wasn't reported can really help our clients get things they need in court, like subpoenas issued to bank accounts to get transactional histories, even having a court-appointed forensic examiner being assigned because of things we find, or it can help with alimony and child support payments, getting our client what they deserve. So, a lot of times we find the bank accounts that they didn't think were there, sometimes hidden businesses or business interests that the spouse didn't know about, which is a place where money can be hidden, or even property, land purchases in other states, or dumping that money into a development or some type of long-term investment where the payout wouldn't happen until years later.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of those are, sometimes it's private contracts where they're doing the long-term investment. So there's not necessarily a way for the spouse to find it, but there's always going to be indicators that type of information is there, or those connections are there. And sometimes even the client provides information that we can go off of because otherwise it would be completely unknown. So it just depends on the situation, but sometimes divorce cases are my favorite because the client usually knows a lot about the situation. They're able to provide a lot of real-time insight, and then we can kind of, we don't have to focus on certain things. We can go right at what they need to know.
You're just had me thinking, obviously we talk about, asset search and it seems sort of like theoretical until you match it to a real situation. So maybe this is TMI, but my wife and I have been married for about 8 years, and I've gathered it's a little unusual where we keep separate finances. So I am a partial owner of a couple businesses and I have my own bank accounts generally. Um, in the nightmare scenario where we ended up going down that road, not even close, love you, Taylor, but would it look like she would come to you after being served papers and she's like, I don't really know what our financial situation is outside of our house, cars, and joint account. I know he has businesses and investments, but that's really it. What do you do in that scenario? Like, what's your first step and how does that conversation go?
Well, I think Joel could speak to that with these types of cases, there's a lot of high emotions. It's stressful for the client. Um, I'd say a lot of the times when we get a divorce case, it is a woman, so it's easier for me to connect with them and reassure them. And I think Joel has a different perspective on that, on what it takes to really get them to trust you and onboard the client in that way.
Yeah, so my first thing, that I typically have to do if it is a female that comes to us, is really break down that barrier. Either, obviously, no good marriage ends in divorce. So there's always problems. There's always something that's causing it. And so all of those pent up emotions, whether it's, rage, anger, sadness, all of the above, are directed at more males in general instead of just the person. So some are where I kind of start. We've talked about it before on previous episodes and stuff. I'm a very direct person, and so I typically just come right out and say it. And one of the first things that I talk about with them is, hey, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Some of these questions are going to be very uncomfortable. Some of them you're not going to like to answer. If we hit that point, let me know. We will probably circle back to those at some point, but once we get there, let me know, and I'm not going to push. And kind of just reassuring them that, hey, we are there for you. We're here to help you find the information, find out what he is hiding, what may be out there, what you're entitled to. With most states being anything developed during the marriage, you're entitled to. And so some of that conversation starts out like that. I typically like to go down with any divorce is tell me everything that you know. If that conversation is I don't know anything, then I kind of just go to work, do my thing, lay out the asset report, and then let them know, like, hey, at the end, we're going to go over everything. And this is not going to be the end point. This is going to be you tell me what doesn't make sense. You tell me either what's missing, stuff that you didn't know about, what is or what isn't there. And then from there, I'll kind of go through and finish the rest of the investigation.
Joel, you hit on something at the beginning that I think, mirrors a lot of sort of consulting and professional services is people need your help, but still when they approach you, it's difficult to be vulnerable and be open. And a big part of PHENIX and your business always seems to be the strategic element of nursing out that information. How big of an obstacle is it to get the first kind of like feeling of openness for these clients that approach you?
I feel like I do a pretty good job at breaking it down pretty quickly. I think one thing that helps is, they know they need help. And so once you kind of get that first foothold of trust, it kind of just breaks everything open. I mean, I've had, multiple people, they'll cuss for the first time on the phone. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, no, I try to return that to them and let them know, hey, I don't care about cussing. And then it usually kind of just breaks open. And I've had, every other word be a cuss word directed towards their now ex-spouse. In the situations where it's like cheating, we get to have conversations about the other woman and we both talk trash about them, and just kind of breaking down that barrier in that way of like, again, I'm here for you. I will sit there with you and call that woman every name in the book and then go through and still do my job and make sure that you, again, feel comfortable. You know that we're on your side and we're going to give you the best information that we can.
Yeah, it sounds like that's just how a lot of things go is you break down until it's a human to human conversation and not, like a client vendor. That's when you are able to get kind of the meat of it. It's funny we talk here. It's sometimes like the first inappropriate thing someone says. That's what kind of is the snowball of, okay, this is a human conversation now. It's like the guard's down.
For sure. For sure. And to me, from what I've noticed in my tenure in this industry, I mean, that's kind of that tipping point is like, who's going to say the first cuss word? And I will typically throw it out there in most instances. And I've never had a bad reaction to it. Obviously you can kind of tell the people who don't cuss, and I try to
Yeah.
keep my potty mouth out of those conversations. But yeah, I think you're right. And we get attorneys, that was probably the one big surprise for me coming into the industry is like talking to an attorney, and you get some that'll say one or two cuss words, and you get the other ones that, they don't care who's in the room and it's every word in the book. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but again, I don't mind those conversations, so it's never an issue. But I've kind of taken that, and that helps break down those barriers with a lot of people.
I think it's interesting because, we all call, and get services, whether it's like pizza delivery or, like home services or professional. And you can kind of tell when the other person is on the other end just asking questions and filling out fields in a CRM or
100%.
something. And then and you can tell that like there's this moment where you're like, oh, this is a person that cares about my scenario. We're having a conversation and this is a professional. And I think you're hitting on like that's the there's this excitement that the client often feels where it's like, oh, this is a human connection, not like an intermediary between fields and a CRM.
100%. That's actually, some of the problem, not a problem, I guess, but some of the barriers that we go through training new investigators on how to ask the 10, 20, 30 questions that you need to, but how to do it in a conversational way and not just let me read off the list and it's just question, question, question. It's like you have to put those into a conversational piece. And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to go down a list, and it's not going to be how you planned it out in the mirror when you're talking to yourself. And so I do think that helps us connect to a lot of people is, again, we're not here to read off a list. We're not here to swipe your credit card. We're getting emotionally into your situation, feeling what, to a certain degree, what you're feeling. And we also are trying to get to that joyous moment where we do find something that you thought was there.
Right. I think it's so important especially in a personal matter. Because it hits close to home. You're not dealing with a business. You're not dealing with the attorney who's like the middleman between us and their client. This is a real time frustration for them, and being able to make that connection really makes the difference.
I know when you came on at PHENIX, Joel was sort of one of your like mentors there in this. How was it going from, your first sort of onboarding calls where naturally you're kind of new and trepidatious to where I'm sure the first few kind of were more down the list of questions and making notes. At what point in your evolution did it start to feel comfortable to get to the human to human element there?
About a year or more. Some people are very natural on the phone. I'm more of an in-person conversation type of person. And so when you're on the phone, I instantly would freeze up or I'd get nervous, and Joel was that safety net on the phone to make sure the call still went the way it was supposed to go. But getting used to that and being able to break down those barriers, it is something you have to learn. It's not just as easy as picking up the phone and having a conversation.
Yeah, those human to human soft skills are just sort of such an experience driven thing. That's probably a lot of firms struggle is bringing on new investigators is you can teach technical skills, but ultimately you have to do it in the field for a while to have that confidence to break off the script and really nurse out information. Because I would assume the information and transparency you get from clients is critical to your success as an investigator.
100%, yeah. I mean, I kind of remember, I don't remember where it was in my learning of the first year, but my kind of big breakthrough was, talking to an attorney and having an attorney ask me my opinion or for my professional advice, and realizing that, a lot of people see attorneys that they're just these big, bad, absolutely smart, best in the room people, and not in a bad way, but they're not. They're people.
Yes.
And so when I got that, like an attorney asking me how to do their job, how to help them do their job, it's like, okay, that kind of broke that barrier down for me of like, I'm in a position that I'm going to have to be doing this. I'm going to have to give professional advice, talk through some very, very deep and strong points, and I need to learn how to do that very quickly. And I've always been pretty decent at talking and communicating, and maybe not professionally by no means, but this job has definitely brought that out more and more for sure.
And Scott, you brought up a really good point of why that information is so important, that transparency between us and the client. We do have clients that withhold information from us because they want to see if we find it without them telling us, but really it breaks down that barrier that we're a team. And it also, we're spending their time and money. We don't want to do things you already know about. We want to be able to find things and go after things that are unknown. And so providing us the information you already know about just helps us get past that. We verify and move on to the next more important thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have used this sort of scripting at some point, but it's the equivalent of you wouldn't tell a surgeon lies about what you've been doing. They need that information to do their job. But humans are humans, and whenever those animals are involved, things don't work always as they should.
For sure.
That's why we have to have our clients trust us. So it's
how is it, I don't want to generalize lawyers, but if they look for you for help and advice, they obviously view you as a qualified professional because that's a difficult barrier to break down. What are the differences in your mind between working with attorneys and kind of parties in a divorce?
Mine is the emotion part for sure. I mean, attorneys understand that what you think is out there may not be out there. They've went through that ringer with people, and they've went through the emotional roller coaster of that. And so, when we call an attorney and say, like, hey, I just cannot find what your client thinks is out there, and everything that I'm seeing is actually the opposite. They get that, and then it's kind of on me and him now to have that conversation with the client, to talk through that. With people, it's kind of just that clinging to hope almost. It's like they found something 10 years ago that sparked a question in their mind, and over that 10-year period, they've built this thing up of like, okay, my partner has been lying to me our entire relationship, and to break that kind of that worldview of their relationship away to either prove or disprove what they thought. I mean, it's definitely a big struggle in that aspect. I mean, I've been accused by several clients of not knowing what I'm doing, not knowing how to do my job. We're a bunch of idiots, and it's hard to get through to people when that's how they see it. Is like, if you don't validate me, you didn't do your job. We get a lot less of that with the attorneys. I've still had some attorneys that operate that way as well. But that's kind of the bigger difference for me, for sure.
I'd say for me, it's that too, for sure. But it's also like the legal understanding of what we can and can't do. I mean, sometimes it's like, can you put a tracker on the car? Can you hack into his cell phone and you can get into his email? Or I can provide you his email password. Can you get in there? No, and no.
Yeah.
We are bound by some, legal things for our licensure and whatnot. And attorneys understand that better than personal matter clients.
Yeah, unfortunately for some, I'm sure you're not mercenaries. You're geared around admissible information that's held to ethical and legal standards.
Yeah.
How often, like, it's not just your field, some people just, they want it to be one way, but unfortunately it's the other way. How often do people just not believe you and the conversation ends that way?
It's minimal, but it happens for sure.
Yeah.
And again, I think we hit on this a little bit in the last episode that I was on, is just being that direct and, being upfront with people in the onboarding call of like, I'm not here to inflate your ego. I'm here to tell you the truth, and I'm here to tell you the information that I find. And whether or not that is, yes, it's supporting whatever you think is going on, or no, I'm going to tell you either way. But I think all of us here have had that interaction with somebody of just, we're just a bunch of idiots who don't know anything. And it definitely is a hard conversation to get through.
So, Joel, I'll ask you, so in my life experience, it seems like being direct and straightforward sometimes blows up a small percentage of the conversations, but in general, it creates better outcomes for both parties. While I have observed your Toy Story coffee mug and thought it's cute, you are
Yeah.
clearly a direct, straightforward, intelligent professional, and that's kind of a unicorn trait. Why do you think some people have such a challenge being direct?
They don't like confrontation. I mean, some people just either don't like it, can't handle it, have never been put through it. Some people get raised with kid gloves their entire life, and just that confrontation piece has never been there. But the small town that I grew up in, I mean, small town, anybody from a small town is going to tell you this. I mean, there's always the, handful of families that are the best in the world, and everybody thinks that they look up to them and they can't do anything wrong. And I was never a part of that, for sure. My dad, very, very strong-willed, just like us. He taught all of us kids. I think I mentioned it once. He broke our filter for our mouth very, very young. So I've kind of just always been that direct person. I don't like beating around the bush. Don't try to lie to me to help my feelings or anything like that. If you tell me something that's bad, but you have that kind of that personal touch to it of like, I'm doing this for your own good type of thing. It's kind of how I was raised. And I think that's transferred over to here. Is like, you may not want to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm also going to be here to help you pick up the pieces at the end as well.
Anj, how natural was it for you when you started doing this to be direct in telling people things that they just didn't want to hear?
Once I felt more comfortable, because, I didn't necessarily come from an investigation background. I came from customer service. So I was used to telling people directly what I wanted them to do or what needed to be done in a managerial capacity. But as far as communicating with a client directly, it's a different animal. But I quickly learned like the word confrontation is not a bad thing. A lot of times a confrontation leads to a resolution for both people. So being direct in our world, I mean, a lot of the information is factual. You can't change it. So it's going to come off direct. But also being able to be direct so that you're not confusing the client or the attorney, because they're going to take that information and use it a lot of times in a legal way. So it comes with it. You have to be that way.
In our conversations with Brian and you guys, obviously it all goes back to people reach out to PHENIX because they want information. That's like the fundamental core of all of it, and it just comes from like building trust and telling them what it is. So I think that, I guess, if you don't want direct information, you might not be the right people to call.
Yeah, and that kind of sparks that other end of the conversation. Again, people call us to validate what they think or believe or anything like that, and yeah, we have to be the bearer of bad news in some instances. But yeah, I mean, we are information brokers for sure. When we get to go out and do field work and stuff of, whether it's surveillance or interviews or, we've had some other kind of crazy cases. We get to do the other side of the PI work. But yeah, I mean, us two, we're definitely the more information broker part of it. And so, yeah, building that trust, making sure that the client's comfortable, so they believe the results when they come in, and they believe what you're saying is in their best interest, because we get asked that all the time of just, what do I do from here? Go ahead if you're going to say something.
I just had a thought when you said that. How frequently, if at all, do people call, you or Phoenix after speaking to a different private investigation firm, that they were dissatisfied with the answer, and then you kind of just arrive at the same findings?
Yep, we've had that. I mean, I've told many clients, if they start talking kind of down that road, I will direct them to go that way first. Go do what you can do, go research what you can research, do as much as you can do on your own, and then come back to us. Or the opposite, if it's just like any other industry, price shopping, anything like that. It's like, if you've heard a good speech and I haven't done my job well enough, go to them. And when they don't get your answer, come back to me.
I always kind of like to wrap up with something like this. What is your most interesting, messiest, most memorable divorce-related case?
I have two already, if you want to take a second to think, Joel.
Yeah.
Maybe not crazy messy, but just found something that the client really needed, or where they didn't believe there was going to be something. These were actually two situations where the client had come to us not necessarily thinking that there was something off, but kind of wanted that peace of mind. One of them, we found offshore businesses incorporated, so most likely they were transferring assets outside of the United States, which was good for their court case to show, like, this is, he didn't disclose this, it wasn't honest. And another time, it was pretty straightforward. Guy was like a construction worker. He didn't own his own company. There was limited assets. She didn't think there was going to be anything crazy, but then we found these businesses that he'd incorporated probably 15, 20 years ago. They were inactive, but she didn't know about them, and she thought it was weird. I also thought it was a little odd. We ended up looking at their banking, and sure enough, there was like 20 grand sitting in a business account under this inactive business. So.
Interesting. It's funny that could happen in marriage. Is an interesting thing that people always assume that there's full transparency, and that's just not how it is, unfortunately.
You never know. Don't know until you look.
For sure. I've talked a little bit about my at least most heartfelt, memorable case. It was a child custody case that came from a divorce, where the husband had two multi-million-dollar restaurants, doing very well, figured out a way to basically make himself look broke, and got the judge to grant zero alimony for child support for the wife. So she came to us, we did the investigation, was able to show that was not true. She went back to the court, and rightfully got the ex-husband to pay for his kids when he completely refused. I mean, and it went beyond the restaurants, multi-million-dollar restaurants, 4 or 5, $60,000, $70,000 motorcycles that he went through and customized. I mean, just the list went on and on and on. The most messy, I remember we did a very large divorce for a very wealthy guy that we were looking into. Had a very big real estate business. I mean, just multiple businesses all intertwined. So we kind of started the way we normally did, started going through all of the assets. The wife, she was a very strong-willed person as well, ended up changing the direction of the investigation, not my consent, but against my direction. Wanted some certain things done, so we did that and got that part of the investigation done. I actually got a phone call from her, I think it was 2 years after that, complaining that the information from 2 years ago wasn't correct now. And my question or my statement was absolutely, I would expect that. It's been 2 years.
That happens a lot, actually.
Really?
And oh yeah, and this is where being direct is probably not the best approach, because my direct kind of callous answer to her sparked emotion, and that would just kind of created a fight. But again, if you are thinking that in a report from 2 years ago is supposed to be correct now, I mean, you're just crazy anyway. So that that was a very difficult case to get through. Not only when I did it, I mean, I felt like I did a fantastic job. She thought I did a fantastic job at that time. It was a very complicated case. A ton of, I think it was 100 businesses that I had to go through and figure out active, inactive, what connected, what didn't connect, tons of property, and then to get to the other emotional side at the end to tell me that what I did was wrong 2 years ago. It was that was a rough case.
Yeah, it turns out someone that can open up, register, and connect hundreds of businesses can change the orientation of that over a 2-year period.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I answered it almost like she was joking, which was probably the wrong approach. But I nothing else registered in my brain that it wasn't a joke. So it was a little rough.
So the old Dave Chappelle show, when keeping it real goes wrong.
100%.
Yeah. God, wildlife. It's tough. I mean, there's just such a tremendous value in being able to kind of shepherd someone through an emotional, difficult, complicated scenario, despite the weight that it puts on you with the emotional side of it.
Yeah. I mean, you learn to let those go. I mean, it definitely, I think we both spoke to it a little bit previously of your first year or two when you're really getting into cases. I mean, I still spend time where, the case is closed or I'm in the middle and laying in bed and still thinking of what I'm going to do for the case tomorrow and all of those stuff. But I've also learned the other side of when you need to shut down. I mean, the weekend, the vacation, whatever. It's like for me, it's easy to leave it for a couple of days, and that's a hard skill, I think, in any industry if you have a difficult job to do. But I've definitely learned how to do that with how emotional some of our cases do get.
I'd say it gets easier to, before when I was newer, 4 or 5 years ago, it was easy to be really invested and then continue to think about it after it's closed and gone, or, you've done everything you could do. Now it's more of I'm invested, but then when it's over, because I have to be reinvested in the next case for the next client. And there's only so much bandwidth you can take for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing difficult work that you care about, it's just a necessity to learn how to compartmentalize, or ultimately you cost your clients, yourself, and your families. And it's just like a necessary part of doing a hard job. Yeah. So kudos to you guys for doing the work. So I think that's a good wrap up. I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this. You guys have had so many interesting stories and things to say. So love to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys. I think it's cool for me in the aspect of we get asked about our job, but we don't probably talk about it a whole lot because we get the typical, you're the dog, the bounty hunter, or following people who are cheating conversations. And I do like to hear somebody's questions who doesn't really know anything about our industry, but they're actually real legitimate questions. And getting to explain that side of it, I think, is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm able to play a clueless character really well. I mean, obviously, I know everything.
Yeah. I hate bringing it up to, and when people ask what I do for a living, I sometimes fudge what it is, just a little bit, so that they don't ask, because I don't like talking to people about it. Because it is what Joel says. It's oh, you're looking at the cheaters and you're doing that. And it's not me.
No, it's no, that is an entertaining show for sure, but that's not real life.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Until next time.